All right, welcome back, class. You had time to assemble your arguments, the two sides of you. Why don't we go ahead and hear from the side that argued that that Margaret shot Francis Macomber on purpose. You guys go ahead and make your argument. So those are some really good points. I don't know if you guys heard that, but basically they were pointing out the fact that we have it here on page 19 that after Francis fails to shoot the lion, which is, it seems like Margaret responds to that as seeing that as an act of cowardice. So Francis goes to hold her hand and she pulls her hand away. And further than that, she goes and she has this nighttime rendezvous with Robert Wilson, which doesn't bode well for the status of their marriage whatsoever. And so it seems really telling here that, this sort of like, she's already doesn't have a great relationship with him to begin with. She's doing these sort of bitter things based on the way he was failed to shoot a lion. And yet you point out that after he does shoot the lion or shoot the buffalo, that she completely changes and all of a sudden she's really bitter about hunting in general. She doesn't want to do it. She tells them that they're cheating. I think that's pretty interesting from the text, as you pointed out so cleverly. And so, she seems upset with him, and this is the same thing that Robert Wilson accuses her of in the end. He says, he was going to leave you. And, the text tells us that basically he was a changed man, and so sort of the assumption we're getting led to here is that Margaret, feeling scared that her husband suddenly had a sense of power when she had the power before, chooses to kill her husband rather than have him leave her. And so, you pointed to evidence in the text. Other side, do you you have a rebuttal for that? Any other evidence? Oh, okay. So you're looking even at Robert Wilson. So basically, Robert Wilson here is the one who comes and accuses Margaret at the end within dialogue, and so I'm glad that you're pulling specifically from dialogue because that's really telling. You're saying that Robert Wilson's dialogue doesn't match up with some of the things that the text tells us about his thoughts and feelings. We get these whole sections about his feelings on killing and things like that, and then the way he confronts Margaret at the end, you don't think that those line up. You think that he's sort of fictating something that isn't there. Not to mention his relationship with her kind of complicates things, and so you're drawing on relationships, and so I think that's a pretty apt characterization. Basically, you're just arguing that Margaret wouldn't have the motivation to to go ahead and kill Francis, her husband, after all this time. That she was actually trying to save him by shooting at the buffalo and happened to kill him. Which is a completely different. If you see this, these are two completely different Margarets. And yet you're both working from the text here, working just from these 5 clues that the text can give you, and coming to completely different conclusions about a wife that either loves her husband so much she's going to jump out and try and shoot this buffalo in panic, or a wife that's going to cunningly see her opportunity. And if you've noticed, the position you're in right now is the exact same position that even Robert Wilson is in. Robert Wilson, from his experiences of Margaret, is casting her as this cunning, she's taking advantage of the opportunity to make this look like a murderous kind of accident, whereas, for somebody like Francis, if you were to believe in Francis and him and Margaret together and actually loving each other, she's really, when push comes to shove, she's there for him. They've got their rocky spots in the relationship, but she stands up for him. And so these are totally different depictions based on the same clues. And so you can see how slippery this is, and yet at the same time, you can see, too, how much clearer it becomes when you analyze characters through these lenses. And so, while you're subconsciously, when you read a text, making judgments, the same way you do when you're on social media, making snap judgments about people based on these things, if you really slow down, you could even try this with social media, slow down, think about actions, appearances, dialogue, you can come to a lot more informed decisions about characters, about people, and actually, what they're trying to do. And so I guess my final question for the class is, based on your final interpretation, and I don't know, I didn't see if anybody had changed sides here, but based on your final stance here, what do you think then that the Margaret either shooting him purposefully or on accident could inform us about this story's title? The Short Happy Life of Francis Macomber. What is Ernest Hemingway trying to tell us with that title? Is this a positive thing? Is it ironic? Yes. Okay, so you see this as like a sort of ironic thing. Like it's, I mean, you say they're short, happy, that it wasn't actually anything he ever attained. It's kind of it's a play on this sort of like power thing. Now I think that's based on like the evidence you're pulling from totally valid. Okay, and you see this, so you think short, happy life, you think it genuinely was a happy life. You think you're saying that paragraph where we basically see him stand tall for the first time, that he really did, his life started then, and then it, was short and happy in those few moments before he is killed accidentally. And so you can see that those are both like completely valid readings, but only if you're able just to back it up from the text. And so rather than, making assumptions, when we dig into these kind of things, we can come to a lot more informed conclusions about a text, its characters and motivations, especially when the characters are complicated and they have, shifting motives and things like that. So that's our lesson for today. Thank you, class.